A young woman disappeared during a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, and from the very beginning, the public thought they knew what happened. But the deeper investigators looked, the more the story changed. Then a nationwide search through swamps and wilderness, and in the end, the truth surfaced in the most unexpected way. Before the headlines and helicopters, there was Gabby Petito. Born March 19, 1999 in Blue Point, New York, she grew up in a close family and was described as creative, independent, and adventurous. After high school, she worked several jobs before reconnecting with Brian Laundrie. They had known each other as teenagers, and by July 2020 they were engaged. In the summer of 2021, they began a cross-country van trip to document their travels online. Gabby launched a YouTube channel called Nomadic Static, posting polished travel videos. In early July, they left in a white Ford Transit van registered to her, planning to visit national parks across the western United States. Their travels included Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon National Park, and Arches National Park. The images were bright and romantic, but tension was building behind the scenes. On August 12, 2021, police in Moab, Utah responded to a 911 call reporting that a man had struck a woman outside a store. Officers located the couple near Arches National Park. Body camera footage later showed Gabby visibly upset, crying and apologizing, while Brian appeared calm. Police classified the incident as a mental health crisis, separated them for the night, and filed no charges. After that stop, they continued traveling. Gabby remained active online through late August, though her posts became less frequent. On August 25, she FaceTimed her mother for what would be their final conversation. Later texts sent from her phone, including one referencing Yosemite, did not sound consistent to her mother. On September 1, Brian returned alone to his parents' home in North Port, Florida, driving Gabby's van. She was not with him. For 10 days, her family was unaware of his return. On September 11, after repeated failed attempts to reach her, they reported Gabby missing to police in Suffolk County, New York. The investigation escalated quickly. Social media users began reconstructing timelines. Footage from the Moab stop spread widely. Multiple agencies became involved, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The question became unavoidable: where was Gabby Petito? By then, it was clear the trip had ended. Whatever had happened between Utah and Wyoming had been left behind. On September 14, 2021, the FBI confirmed it was assisting in the search. Agents arrived at the Laundrie home in North Port as media and protesters gathered outside. Inside were Brian's parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie. Brian declined to speak with investigators. Through his attorney, Stephen Bertolino, he offered no explanation for returning to Florida alone in Gabby's van and did not assist in the search. On September 17, the case shifted again. Brian's family reported him missing, stating he had left home on September 14 with a backpack and headed toward Carlton Reserve, a vast swamp preserve spanning more than 24,000 acres. At that point, both members of the couple were missing. The Federal Bureau of Investigation executed a search warrant at the Laundrie residence and seized the white Ford Transit van. Meanwhile, investigators focused on northern Wyoming, narrowing the search area near Grand Teton National Park using phone data and witness information. A significant break came when a traveling couple reviewed their dashcam footage and realized they had captured Gabby's van parked near the Spread Creek camping area, just outside the park. The footage was provided to authorities. On September 19, search teams located human remains near the eastern boundary of Grand Teton National Park. The next day, the FBI confirmed the remains matched Gabby's description. On September 21, the Teton County coroner officially identified the body as Gabby Petito and ruled the death a homicide. The cause was later determined to be manual strangulation. She was 22 years old. With Gabby's search concluded, attention turned fully to Brian. On September 23, the FBI issued a federal warrant for his arrest, not for homicide, but for unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card between August 30 and September 1. Investigators alleged he withdrew more than $1,000 during his return to Florida. Brian remained missing. Law enforcement deployed drones, K-9 units, airboats, and ground teams across Carlton Reserve. The flooded terrain, dense vegetation, and rising water made the search difficult and dangerous. Frustration grew as days passed. Brian had returned home alone, refused to cooperate, and then disappeared. By late September, the case had become national news. Media coverage intensified, and protesters gathered outside the Laundrie home in North Port, Florida, demanding answers. Nicole Schmidt and Joseph Petito made public appeals for information. Gabby's stepfather traveled to Wyoming during the search and later described the uncertainty surrounding the investigation. Inside the Laundrie home, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie remained silent, communicating only through their attorney. Their lack of public statements fueled further speculation. Authorities explained that when Brian returned to Florida on September 1, Gabby had not yet been reported missing. There was no warrant and no formal charge at the time, meaning there were no legal grounds to detain him. The search expanded beyond Florida. Investigators followed reported sightings in other states, including areas along Appalachian trails and in Alabama. None were confirmed. Back in Florida, teams continued searching Carlton Reserve. On October 7, officials shifted focus to nearby Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park after Brian's parents stated he had left his vehicle there before entering the reserve. That detail raised public questions, but no charges were filed. On October 12, Teton County Coroner Dr. Brent Blue confirmed that Gabby Petito died by strangulation. He estimated her body had been in the area near Grand Teton National Park for 3 to 4 weeks before discovery. The case was now officially a homicide investigation, and the only person known to have been with her during that period remained missing. Memorial services were held in New York and Florida, drawing thousands. Online discussion intensified around domestic violence and the August 12 traffic stop near Arches National Park. The footage from that incident was widely reviewed and analyzed. Search efforts continued in Florida as teams combed flooded terrain in pursuit of Brian Laundrie. By mid-October, water levels inside Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park began to recede. On October 20, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie joined law enforcement in searching the area and indicated trails Brian had used previously. That day, items belonging to Brian were located along a path that had recently been underwater. Shortly afterward, investigators discovered partial human remains nearby, along with a backpack and notebook believed to be his. The remains were sent for forensic testing. On October 21, the Federal Bureau of Investigation confirmed through dental records that the remains belonged to Brian Laundrie. The search ended. There had been no arrest or trial. The primary suspect in Gabby's homicide was dead. Authorities later determined Brian died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A revolver was recovered at the scene. In January 2022, the FBI released its final report. Investigators stated that a notebook recovered near Brian's remains contained writings in which he accepted responsibility for Gabby's death. The Bureau concluded he was responsible for the homicide. Because he was deceased, no prosecution occurred and federal charges related to debit card fraud were dismissed. The case was formally closed. In the months that followed, Gabby's parents pursued civil action. In March 2022, Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt filed a lawsuit against Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, later reaching a confidential settlement. They also filed suit against the Moab Police Department, alleging officers did not properly assess the August 12 encounter. In November 2022, the family reached a $3 million wrongful death settlement with Brian Laundrie's estate. The funds were designated for Gabby's estate. Gabby's funeral in Holbrook, New York drew thousands of attendees. Her father asked the public to remember her life and encouraged anyone experiencing abuse to seek help. Her mother later founded the Gabby Petito Foundation to support families of missing persons and raise awareness about domestic violence. The case generated extensive online engagement. Social media users analyzed timelines and reviewed publicly released evidence. That attention contributed to key developments, including the dashcam footage that helped guide search efforts. It also sparked broader discussion about disparities in media coverage and the influence of online communities on active investigations. Law enforcement agencies reviewed domestic violence response protocols following the August 12 stop near Arches National Park. The case became a reference point in conversations about intimate partner violence, digital transparency, and investigative procedures. Medical examiners determined that Brian Laundrie died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the area of Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park. Authorities concluded his death occurred shortly after he entered the reserve in mid-September 2021. Flooding delayed the recovery of his remains for several weeks. Because he died before arrest, there was no trial or courtroom proceeding. The official findings were based on investigative reports released by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For Gabby Petito's family, that meant no testimony under oath and no sentencing. The criminal case concluded without a public verdict. In the months that followed, her parents focused on advocacy efforts through the Gabby Petito Foundation, supporting families of missing persons and promoting awareness of domestic violence and coercive relationships. The case influenced national conversation around domestic violence response, investigative procedures, and the role of social media in active cases. The August 12 traffic stop near Arches National Park was widely reviewed in discussions about how warning signs can be interpreted differently in real time. Public engagement online contributed to developments in the investigation, including the identification of key visual evidence. The case also sparked debate about media coverage patterns and the impact of real-time digital participation in criminal investigations. With Brian deceased, authorities formally concluded the homicide investigation. No further charges would proceed. For Gabby's family, remembrance became the priority. They continued speaking her name and supporting awareness initiatives through advocacy work. For those who followed the case, the images remained consistent. A white van on a rural road, a young woman documenting her journey, and a relationship that appeared normal from the outside. The case stands as a reminder that danger is not always immediately visible, and that warning signs can exist in everyday situations. Gabby's story remains part of ongoing discussions about safety, accountability, and awareness.